Ole Anderson passed away, and then obviously today Virgil passed away. So bad couple days for the wrestling business.
Well, as it will come to all men, death will find its way, and we're all going to go. So, but Ole was always great to me. I worked with Ole a couple times in Atlanta, house shows. Um, was always great. And when I would see him on the at conventions and a place like that, he would always be great, even though he had to be reminded. And I don't know if he really fully knew who I was or not. So
Really? So he was big timing you a little bit.
no, he had Alzheimer's.
Barbara
Yeah,
saying Orange said Ole made a lot of money before the Four Horsemen. Did he draw good money in his prime?
yeah. Ole was the top guy from day one. I think big guy. He made a lot of money.
He made a ton of money kind of before the Horsemen for sure. Also as a booker, because when he
Yeah,
worked for Georgia in the early 80s and he was booking for JCP, so he was booking for both companies at the same time and wrestling at the same time.
right.
So he made a ton of money in the early 80s before the
Yeah,
Horsemen.
but he was working his ass off.
Yep.
So sure did.
And those guys, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, were like the big draws of the territory at one point before the Four Horsemen came around.
Yeah, Ole and Gene were tough, man. Great combination.
Jason, R.I.P. Ole Anderson. I hope he is happier in the afterlife than he was in this one.
I think he will be, and I think also, it's we're going to see that because more and more the guys from that era, and I'm talking about the era right before, in the '60s and '70s, that era. Those guys are getting up there, and guys like Lawler, Dundee from the Tennessee area. Just every time I see them, I wonder how they're doing.
Was Ole a good booker? How would you rank him?
Yeah, I think Ole was a good booker. He took Tommy Rich and booked him against Abdullah, and at least that's how the story went. I think, as he booked him against Abdullah, Abdullah massacred him, beat him up, and bloodied him up and everything. And then somebody came to his rescue, and they had a tag match, and Ole just fought, or Ole Tommy fought back, and yeah, I thought it was a pretty good booker, very good booker.
Got a little out of sorts in the 90s with WCW. I don't think he did that good of a job. The Black Scorpion comes to mind as just not a good booking idea, not a
Well,
good plan.
if you think about it, how long had Ole been booking by that time?
Oh, God. 20 years, maybe? I mean, it was a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, less than that, but a lot. Yeah. It was a while.
even those guys are allowed to get burnt out. That's probably a burnout moment. So
Magazine Retriever, good point here. Ole's voice went so well with the Shockmaster appearance.
mm, yeah, the Shockmaster will never go away for those that the real people who want to find out about it.
Ric Flair said in an interview that Ole was the booker for his 1993 return to WCW. Flair claims Ole asked him, "What good are you now?" Because he said he'd lost the belt in WWF for his return, and he lost that loser leaves town match to Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, too. And Ole was not happy with him for whatever reason. That, obviously you do business on the way out, and Ole didn't like him doing that.
Right. Well, again, I think that goes back to the animosity they had their whole relationship. So, Ole knows it's still Ric Flair. It was the Carolinas, and Flair was over. Ole wasn't stupid, but I think he was just busting his balls.
And hey, there was a little bit of an age gap, obviously, between them, like 6 years, I believe, or so. So
Right.
always he kind of elder statesman. He's got a kid who's about to be in college at that point, and hey, much different as far as where he was in his life in the '80s with the Horsemen, where Flair was partying every night and buying the whole town drinks and taking women to Space Mountain.
Right.
As far as Ole's concerned, I know people always said this. I know Teddy Long has recently said this, talking about how he was so racist and he's so
Mm.
mean and he's such a bully. Have you ever heard or seen any of that type of behavior from Ole?
Well, I heard from Teddy, but I never saw it myself. I never witnessed it or experienced it myself.
My only problem with that is his best friend who was black. So how racist could you be if your best friend Thunderbolt Patterson is black? What do you think? Just encompassing Ole Anderson, what do you think his legacy is, and what do you think about Virgil? What do you think his legacy is? Very,
I
very
think
different.
I think yeah, but I think Ole should be remembered as a great booker, great worker, guy who revolutionized the business, part of one of the most famous factions of all time, if not the most famous faction of all time.
Yep.
Who he was the inspiration for DX, the Click. I mean, Ole
NWO.
was NWO, yeah. So she should be known and have a legacy for being that driving force and being a smart booker.